Good evening and welcome to the November 5th City Council meeting. As I said at the last meeting, I'm here in body and in spirit, but not in voice. And so at this point, I'm turning the gavel over to the Vice President of the City Council, Bill Cox, who will conduct the meeting.
Pledge of Allegiance, Fire Chief Holland. Invocation, sorry.
You want me to do both?
Yes, please.
Okay. We can bow. The gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, Lord, and I just thank you for allowing us to be able to gather together. And Father, we just ask that you just be with the council tonight's meeting, Father, and also just ask you to be with all of our first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and everything over in the hurricane area, and be with all those families, Father, that their lives have been shattered by this devastation. And we just ask for your guidance and your blessing, Father, in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Open policy making and legislative session. Agenda approval.
Mr. President, I think we have to call for, see who's here and who's not here.
Excuse me.
We don't have, Madam Clerk, we don't have a sign in tonight?
No, sir.
Just identify the quorum then.
We have all council members present. Need to approve agenda. Any objections to this evening's agenda? Agenda approved by unanimous consent. Special presentations.
Yes, Mr. Cox. I have a couple of people I want to recognize this evening for their time as an employee of the City of Crestview. I'd like to ask Officer Burgess to join me up here. Deputy Chief Grant will come up here. Mr. Burgess has been with us. Officer Burgess has been with us for 5 years. Right? Okay, let's have Chief Grant talk to you about you a little bit.
I've been waiting for this all day. Those of you that don't know, this is, I consider him my baby boy. Josh came to us a long time ago. Young kid, he's grown up, very professional, very proud of him. He's went from being a patrol officer to a sergeant now. He's done a fine job for us. 5 years, he's become one of our senior officers on us, so we're very proud of him. So we'll keep him for another 5 to 10 years. At least until he's 18.
Well, he's had a lot of influential people in his lifetime before he got here, which is probably who they were responsible for him being such a good officer.
I think his mom kept him straight.
I was talking about myself. My student a long time ago. The City of Crestview 5-year service award is presented to Joshua Burgess of the Crestview Police Department, November 20, 2013 to November 20, 2018, for the honorable and dedicated services daily rendered by this highly valued employee and for the quality of time and ceaseless effort utilized in completing each and every task exceedingly above minimal standards with excellence. And for all the duties you have selflessly performed for the citizens of Crestview within the last 5 years, you are highly commended and recognized for your rendered services to the citizens of the City of Crestview, Florida. Congratulations, Josh. Thank you. Mr. Steele, would you join me up here?
Oh.
I know it.
might be careful of that old fella coming up here. You didn't know we were gonna do this tonight, did you? Ah.
No, I had no idea it was that time.
Well,
You've been here this long, the days just seem to.
they seem like, this is 20-year, I don't get to get too many 20-year boy. Lane is the Director of Public Services for Crestview, and I value his friendship and mentorship more than you can ever think. Every time I have a tough decision, I'm always turning to him. Now, really, if you notice I've backed off on your days off. I don't call you as much when your days off anymore. I'm the man that has all the answers, and I can't wait till next week to get that answer. So, anybody up here have anything to say about this gentleman? He doesn't do much of a job for us.
For the department and where he stands, don't replace him.
That's exactly right.
No, sir.
I like to say, I appreciate your knowledge.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes when I have things that citizens are concerned about, and I don't know the answer, I give you a call, send you email, and it's not like he waits till tomorrow or next week to respond to the citizen or to me. Normally that same day, within a few hours or less, he's got the answer for me, and I value your knowledge and your friendship in his office, and we sit down and we talk. He doesn't offer me any dinner or anything like that, but our candy bar. But I enjoy this. What I like is he's honest about his answers. He doesn't try to give me an answer just to be saying something. It's factual what he's saying. He's got the information to back it up. So I really appreciate that from him.
Got that right.
Anybody else have anything? Right here, we'll go here.
He has never failed to call me back in just a few minutes whenever, and there for a while I was calling him a lot. But he sits over there, and any issue that we have and we call on him without any notes or anything, he knows everything there is to know about this city, the streets and the trains and everything. It amazes me, the knowledge he has. And he's I don't know how Christy wound up with the best, but we did.
He's awesome. We're blessed as a city to have Mr. Steele.
Yes, sir.
I would just say what I can say, and that is truly professional. I bug him, and I bug him a lot, and he's always responsive. And it's great working with Wayne. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
And actually, did things need to be done, you do it real quickly too. And I've appreciated that through the years, and it's been very, very good to the city.
Well, I appreciate all the comments, it's humbling, I really do, and I've been blessed. I've worked for the city a long time. I started before I ever graduated from high school, working on the SEGA program. So when you've been a part of an institution and part of something as long as I have here, even though I've left a couple of times, it seems to grow on you and becomes a part of your life, whether you want it to, or day and night, weekends off, days off. People like the mayor are good. I always felt obligated to respond because the city has been real good to me and my family. So
I just never wanted you to feel that we'd forgotten you those days off.
I appreciate it.
The City of Crestview 20-year service award is presented to Wayne Steele of the Crestview Public Services Department, November 30, 1998, to November 30, 2018. For the honorable and dedicated services daily rendered by this highly valued employee, and for the quality of time and effort utilized in completing each and every task exceedingly above minimal standards with excellence. And for all the duties you have accomplished within these 20 years, you are highly appreciated and recommended and commended for services rendered to the citizens of the city of Crestview, Florida. Thank you, Wayne.
Yes, sir. That's 29 years total.
You don't have to worry about calling him on the weekends and things off. I do it.
Next, we'll have approval of minutes from May 25th, 2018 workshop, June 25th, 2018 workshop, July 23rd, 2018 budget workshop, September 24, 2018 public hearing, September 24, 2018 special meeting, and the September 24, 2018 workshop. In-
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve the stated minutes that you just announced.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Minutes approved, 5-0. Public hearing. Is there Mr. Excuse me.
We don't have any votes.
Okay, right, excuse me. Public opportunity on council propositions. So Mr. Andrew Pratt? Yes. Please state your name and address, please.
Yes, it's Andrew Pratt, and I live at 131 Alicia Drive. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Like many in Crestview, I'm a military veteran, and just as I served to protect others then, I continue to do that today. As you may have noticed, with signs around town and posts online, I'm an advocate for animals and a voice for those who have no voice. If I were to ask you if you supported animal cruelty, as I have with the hundreds of people, I would expect you to say no. Everyone says no. Yet they accept it when it's out of sight, and they benefit from it. In the case of the circus that's setting up down the road, if you look online, you can see a small glimpse of what normally happens out of sight. The animal trainer for this circus, who has prior animal cruelty convictions, striking an elephant in the face with a bullhook in front of an audience of families. This is not an isolated incident, it's routine. That's because while the animals don't perform out of choice, they perform for you out of fear and the threat of violence. Similar abuse has been documented. This animal act has 28 USDA citations, one in 2012 with an elephant named Koski, who was beaten, quote, at least 5 times about the eyes and ears to teach her not to take another elephant's hay. Last year, the circus lied to the Crestview Bulletin, saying that the allegations were false, quote, fake news. I have a copy of that violation from the USDA if you'd like to see it. It's factual, and I have the evidence, as Mr. Hayes mentioned earlier. It's abuse that anyone would object to in person, and more importantly, it's unnecessary with so many alternatives available. I and 2,000 others who signed a petition wish that the Historical Preservation Board would have picked one of those alternatives, and I hope they do next year because it's just as easy to invite an animal-free circus to Crestview instead. It's as simple as dialing a different phone number. You can get the same experience from shows like Cirque du Soleil and Circus Italia that routinely tour Florida. And Fort Walton Beach did just that this year. After decades of abuse came to light from Cole Brothers Circus, they opted for Circus Italia instead. I can't make the decision for the board who they invite, and I don't fault them for trying to raise money for the city. But what I can do is help protect the victims and encourage this council to add a review of the animal control ordinance to your workshop. I ask that you consider adopting a similar ordinance to our friends down in Sebring, Florida, near Tampa, Section 440 that passed just last year, that protects these animals from bullhooks, whips, electric prods, and other devices, whose sole intention is to inflict pain and invoke fear. In doing so, we would join a host of other cities and over 45 countries that have taken similar action because violence is not entertainment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Pratt. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak? Move on to consent agenda.
Time up.
Any objections or discussion on any consent agenda items? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Wait, no, it's the timer. Don't do it. Don't do it. Sorry. Time's up, Mr. Brett. Right here, time.
Again, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Blocker.
I move to approve the consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H with I.
Have a motion, is there a second? Have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
Councilman Hayes. Any discussion? Hearing none, no. We'll go to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Consent agenda. Item 10, resolutions.
Mr. President,
Councilman Hayes.
I voted all in favor of the agenda items, but I would like, our growth management, director to explain G for us. I voted on it, I'm already aware of it, but some of us might not know, our public might not know, understand what some of these, classes are under the alcohol beverages, so they have a better understanding of the different classes, if you don't mind, for G.
Your G item was for the Crestview Food Max, doing business as Depot 87. They applied for a APS alcohol beverage certificate of compliance. And that means that they can sell beer and wine in sealed containers for consumption off premises. It means that they're a store, somebody's gonna go in, they're gonna purchase beer or wine, and they must take it with them and consume it at home or wherever.
No open containers.
No open containers, no, sir. And, would you like the other two, the two COP? Okay. The Kelly Girl Holdings, which will be the Fresh Table Gastro Pub, is a 2 COP. Again, the 2 means the beer and wine is for sale by the drink for consumption on premises, or it is actually in a sealed containers for package sale, which means they could actually purchase it and take it with them. So they can drink beer and wine on premises, or they can take beer and wine in a sealed container with them. And the last one that we had tonight was a Pepper's Mexican Grill. It is a 4 COP. It means that beer, wine, and liquor in connection with a restaurant consumption on premises. It means they can only have spirituous beverages, which is the liquor, in quarts, fifths, or miniatures. They must meet certain requirements as far as the number of seats, the number of square footage in the restaurant, and the sale of alcohol beverages is actually prohibited without food service, and if food service is not available. So that means all the sale for the alcohol beverages will be in conjunction with having food. So, and the Pepper's Mexican Grill will actually be a full functioning restaurant. So.
I can testify to Peppers. I ate there Friday night, and it was good.
Didn't have anything to do.
That's correct.
I ain't there today.
Okay, resolutions, I don't think there's any resolutions this evening. Any committee reports? None. Scheduled presentations from the public? None. Okay, item 13. Project reports and comments from mayor and council. And item A is discussion of city manager duties regarding department heads
I'll,
by Council President Witten, if you can speak.
yeah, I'll see if I can get through this. What happened was when the city clerk and I were working on the RFQ and the job description for city manager, it was pointed out to us by our liaison, Buzz Eddy, from the Florida City Managers Association, that there was no provision in there for the city manager to discipline, dismiss, or fire any department head, which I don't think was the intent of hiring a CEO who didn't have the authority to do that. And if you look at the charter that we handed out tonight on page 11, it very specifically says, department heads shall be appointed by the city council on the recommendation of the city manager. But how a department head is dismissed is silent. It's not in there, not addressed at all. So what I did was I contacted Mr. Eddy and I said, if our intent was to do that, can it be fixed? And he said yes, because the same thing happened in Gulf Breeze, and they passed an ordinance which addresses anything as silent in the charter. You could not pass an ordinance that goes against what you already have in the charter, because people voted on that. But we have a paragraph in the charter that says we can pass ordinances in order to implement the charter. So I then contacted Mr. Shirley, the attorney in Tallahassee, who had drafted a whole charter for us, and asked him, I gave him the document that Mr. Eddy gave me and said, how would you draft this for the city of Crestview if we wanted to do that? And he sent back what you see in your package today that you received late last week, and that's a draft of what an ordinance would look like in order to fix that situation. Now, keeping in mind I might be the only one that saw the situation, I then asked to have a meeting with the mayor, the city clerk, our city attorney, and our council assistant, and said, do I have your support to bring this to the council in order to address what I think is a glaring deficiency that we left out of the charter. And I got the consensus from them to bring it to y'all tonight. And so you see the verbiage that Mr. Shirley has come up with. And what I'm looking for tonight is the consensus from y'all. If you feel like you want to go ahead and have Mr. Shirley draft, well, actually, I guess we could draft the ordinance based on his verbiage. Do you want to go ahead?
Draft it since he's the one.
Well, no.
I let him draft it since he's the one that came up with it.
Okay, and then we would have Mr. Shirley draft the ordinance based on his recommendation to us. So I'll bring it to you this evening to see whether you support that or whether you don't support it. But I don't know. I think it was our intent to give that authority to the city manager, and it's what Mrs. Shirley calls as silent. It's not in there. It's not for or against. It's just not addressed at all. So I'll leave it like that. And
Mr. President, or Mr. Action. I met with them and we talked about it, and it was my opinion at the time that if they passed an ordinance that didn't deal with changing anything in the charter, they had authority to do it. So what they've come up with is, or Mr. Shirley has, is to amend the ordinance we've already got. They had a provision that takes care of this, and it doesn't change anything that's in the charter. So it's my opinion that that would be the best thing to do, because I think one of the problems for not having that authority is that it may be hard to get applicants for the job, which we had a process of trying to do.
Okay, open for discussion. Council members?
Mr. Chair, I'm in complete agreement with it myself.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I wholeheartedly agree with. our counselor's recommendation also.
Okay.
This draft that's in our
Fairclough.
packet tonight, is that what we're voting on? Because it's certainly not a complete,
Oh, here,
We're-
put that in,
We're looking for consensus
ordinance form.
to amend for Attorney Shirley to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
And bring it back to us.
I can support that.
Okay? And myself, so all council members are in agreement. So we have a consensus to proceed on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Item B, analysis of City Government Week. Council President Whitten.
You're really trying to wear me out, aren't you? I would just say that Monday night special meeting we had for City Government Week was a smashing success. Although it reportedly said we had over 100 people, the head count we had was over 250 people at that meeting. That was all the chairs that were out there. We had 210 chairs. We had 35 people in the back room, people on the side of the room. The negative part is I think it probably drew away from the coffee we had the next morning, which only drew a half dozen people. And the town hall meetings we had that only drew a half dozen people each one. So my recommendation is, my suggestion is that next year we form an ad hoc committee comprised of representatives from each department and one council member and a council assistant, and have them plan the City Government Week for next year. And then we might get some new thoughts and energy into that kind of thinking. So that's my recommendation in order to improve it for next year.
Any discussion, other council members?
I just like to add to that, Mr. Chairman, President, the Vice President. The feedback I got has been all positive. The people have been coming and saying, we really enjoyed that. It's the first time where they appreciate that we recognize the organizations that assist the citizens in Crestview. So like I say, everyone they've been coming to me, yeah, that was good. Y'all should do that again, you know. But it was real good, and I think our half-sick president for coming up with that, or for making sure that came to tuition.
I agree. The Warriors Hall event was awesome. I personally missed the Casbah coffee thing. I had a scheduled. I'm sitting up here getting used to a new eye, intraocular lens, it's called. So I wasn't able to attend that. Friday afternoon, myself, I participated in a patrol officer ride-along program with Officer Hardaway, and that was pretty neat. And other council members, if you haven't participated in that, I highly recommend it. So, and I think ad hoc committee is an excellent idea.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Steele, how many chairs do we have will accommodate the Warriors Hall seating?
We have, there's supposed to be 200 up there. I think we had 210. We have over 500 at community center, some new ones. We ordered new ones this year. We're supposed to have around 1,000 at the community center, but we are down a little bit. Some of them are broken, some of them not usable anymore. So when we pulled that 200 from there,
Right.
it's up there. So that's what we have, because we're thinking, I know we don't have a certified capacity there. I was going to ask the fire marshal what the seating capacity was, but don't know that.
Don't ask that question.
Okay.
undercounted.
But we have 210 there currently, and we have in our budget this year to replace some and order some more. So we will have some new ones there and at the community center to replace those that are, so we'll have an abundant of however many we should need.
Well, that was the only negative question that I got the whole night, and since then, why can't the city furnish people a place to sit down?
Well, we
I'm gonna
thought
tell
we
him
had
to call
enough.
Mr. Steele, he'll tell him.
Yes, sir, we'll take care of it.
I was there, and I thought that what really made it go over the top was the people from France being there.
Right, exactly.
That was very popular.
That was nice.
That was a
I
success.
told people from France we draw that many people every meeting.
All right. Item C, discussion of building study committee, Mayor Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I have a couple other items after I do this part.
Okay.
Last week, we had Deputy Chief Grant, Fire Marshal Lancaster, Commander Schneider, along with Councilman Blocker and Cox. We went to Panama City to do some specific touring there about the buildings, especially city and municipal buildings, and what has worked in a storm of that fashion, what doesn't work, not much worked. And we especially toured some of the smaller areas like Parker, Springfield, and Callaway. By the way, those areas have been sort of overlooked with supplies. So we were able to help Parker Police Department out. And as we were looking at those buildings, we came back somewhat disturbed about our own situation here and what would happen if the city of Crestview had to face a storm of that magnitude. I met with Mr. Steele and the chiefs and Mrs. Roy in this room after we'd gotten back. And we've set aside $200,000 to that new dispatch center in the Whitehurst building by Warriors Hall. And it was the consensus of all of us there that there's possibility that we could redo our dispatch center, still be able to have all of them in the same building, but redo some of the rooms that we have there for a lot less cost than this. And with the other, we could set up a interdepartmental building committee that we can look at all of our city buildings. We were somewhat concerned about the Whitehurst building, the way that was built in the mid-'80s. Many of our buildings the code is much stricter now than what it was then. We want to evaluate the different city buildings, because you just think about police department alone. The thing that scared me the most was when Chief Grant talked to what it would be like if we have about 60,000 pieces of evidence in that building. If you lose all that evidence, every criminal case that you have pending is thrown out, and then come back and cases that were already settled can come back and will cause us problems also if they wanted to review a case. So I was very concerned about that. We need to look at some different things and some of the public records that we have too. And we were all in agreement with that. So we're wanting to let you know that we're going to hold off on that dispatch center, if that's okay with the council, and give us time to evaluate all the different buildings that we have and what might work, how we may strengthen or harden those buildings somewhat more to be able to protect the assets that we have. Do any of you three over there have anything you want to add to this?
I agree with what you're talking about. I think it's right now we need to evaluate it before we sink that money into that, to make sure we're not building a nice dispatch center into a shell that's not going to withstand something. And the evidence is a great thing. Not only do you lose the cases that are pending, a prime example, a couple months ago I testified in a trial from a 2007 homicide case I made an arrest in.
And that case is pending for possibly a second trial. So any of that evidence that we would lose, that case is basically in jeopardy at that time. But I think we need to evaluate and see where we at, maybe with a structural engineer, have them look at the buildings and tell us what they're wind rated for. If they come back and say it's worth 90 miles per hour, we have an issue.
Mr. Steele?
I agree with the comments that Jamie has made, that Chief Grant, whenever he had went over and they had visited these other cities, and I was telling him my son and wife had been over there almost every weekend helping, and one comment was made to her by the mayor, I think she said Callaway, and was it Parker or Callaway? Anyway, they had lost their city hall, and they didn't even have any billing information. They didn't know how they was going to go back and find that information of who were the water customers, how they were going to bill them, and a lot of things like that was completely gone. And we talked about that as we seem to think that we're proactive, and we feel like we have been proactive because we have had some near misses with a lot of hurricanes in the last 10 years that's helped us. And we talked about what have we done and what things have we done to harden our buildings and our utilities. Well, most all of our utilities, we've been very proactive. We have backup generators. Most of them are diesel powered, so you never know when natural gas will go out during those types of events. We've done a lot of extra things on the utility side, but what good would that give us other than we'd be able to, our utilities would be operational, but we may not have a building for any of the employees to come meet at, and so we got to thinking which building would be the safest, and they asked me, certainly PD building, though the Whitehurst building would not be one that I would think would be safest because of the way it's constructed. And City Hall would probably be one of the safer ones, and of course the Station 3 over behind the hospital has a what do you call that room inside it?
Hurricane shelter.
It's a hurricane shelter that's built inside the building. And we all agree that we should probably form this committee, hire a structural engineer to give us some input as to what buildings are the safest, where we should decide what we should do in the event that we were going to take a direct hit, and if it meant relocating some of our essential services to this building or one of our other buildings, or make one of our other buildings more hurricane proof, such as community center, or either start focusing on building a new city hall and build it to a degree that would withstand and where it would sustain a new dispatch and have our essential services in there. We've talked about that. We're growing. I think in my opinion, it's time for us to really take a serious look at maybe looking at building another city hall and then possibly turning this structure into a new police department. And that was something that Jamie said that he thought it might be a good option, and I agree. I think it's time for us to look at that sometime in the near future because we're growing out of this building, and there's some concerns here that need to be addressed before we sink a lot of money into it for what we're using it for now. That's just my opinion, but I think having this committee would be a good idea and a good way to start looking at some of those bullet items we've discussed, at least get us in the right path and right direction of and preparing ourselves for something could happen like this. We're 30, 40 miles, it could have been us,
Councilman Fairclough.
I wholeheartedly agree with everything the mayor and Mr. Steele and Mr. Deputy Chief Grant has said. If my memory serves me correct, when I was growing up on that site where the Warriors Hall is in the Whitehurst building, there was a concrete block manufacturing company.
That's great.
And I think part of that building might be part of the building from that concrete manufacturing company. I know the front porch is the old loading dock. And they had concrete blocks stacked up out there as, you know, over the hill. And then I don't remember when it closed up, but all of that being said, I don't think that we should put stuff as important as communications and protecting evidence in such a structure as we have now. Just give you an example. What if a hurricane came through here, like they had through Bay County and Calhoun County up toward Leon County, and inside the police department evidence locker there were bags of cocaine, bags of PCP, bags of methamphetamine, stacks of cash that were seized with the drugs, weapons, physical evidence from sexual assaults, and on and on and on and on. What if that evidence was found a half mile from its secured facility, where kids could pick it up and test it, see what is it, you know, this could be drugs, let's try it. Or I found a pistol yesterday, you know, let's go shoot it. You know? Or maybe the sexual battery victim was your wife or sister or daughter or granddaughter, and you got good, compelling evidence against the perpetrator, and now nobody knows where it is. So that case goes out the window. So they're just much, much, much too important stuff to not secure it somehow in a hurricane-proof place, if not a building, a room, to secure this, safely secure this stuff. And it ought to have, just like Mr. Steele says, it ought to be backed up with automatic generators. So we are lax, in my estimation, of a city government group if we don't do this. This might have been a warning. And so we have to take what information we've been given and do something with it. We're not going to get anywhere if we sit here and talk it to death. And we've got a few months, apparently, but when hurricane season gets here, what is it, June 1st? When it gets here, we better be ready to go with something. Thank you.
Mr. Cox. I just want to pass along something. Mr. Steele was talking about one of the cities not having any information as far as their utility billing. 3 or 4 years ago, and we need to preserve a lot of records. However, several years ago, we did go to a cloud system in our entire financial offices. All of our financial records, all of our utility billing records, and I believe the police department's Superion also is now in the cloud. So it's held in 2 different places, one in Florida, one in Las Vegas. So those records, should something happen to City Hall, those records can be accessed with a remote computer. So that the good part is, several years ago we went to that information, so we are ready for that kind of information not to be lost in the event of a tragedy. So.
Tony, do you have?
The only thing I was going to add to it, just for record purpose, in case public don't really know where Callaway, Parker, and Springfield is, we looked at those areas because they're like us. They were approximately about 40 to 35 miles inland. They was not directly on the beach. They were like us. We're away from the waters, and still the devastation is just horrendous over there. What the hit they took. So Just to throw that out there, so that way everybody not thinking that it was right on the beach. It wasn't. This was like us, about 40 miles away.
Well, I was on that tour, and it was stunning. Just miles and miles and miles of devastation. Those communities are immediately east and adjacent to Panama City, between Panama City and Tyndall. It was stunning. I have a couple of suggestions along the line. One, as an objective, priority one, the evidence room could be cost effectively hardened a room within a room. One, to take care of that as a pressing issue. And two, your correct me if I misspeak, Mr. Steele or so, but the hurricane roof hangers requirement was put in, I think, in the 2001 code, thereabout. So it's like, my suggestion is any buildings that don't have the, that are older, that city inventory, that don't have the roof hangers that attaches extra strength to roof attaching to the sidewalls, those could be retrofitted to our existing buildings cost effectively. And then longer range, we could
Yes, sir, I
plan
agree,
bigger
I
stuff.
agree with your comment. That code, that portion of the Florida Building Code was like we were just saying, it came after Hurricane Andrew.
Yes.
So somewhere in the late 90s. But the problem with up there is a steel building, in which your steel structure would remain. It's this, what would have to happen up there would be to block the building and pour the wall solid. That would be a way to harden that building, and we discussed that. And that's the whole purpose of wanting to form this committee, is to be able to identify those immediate needs and then secondary needs and things like that, things that we can afford to do immediately, and bring those suggestions and comments back to the council. But it gives us a little bit of information rather than speculation. It gives us some hard information. It would also, we would have a structural engineer to take a look at something, especially that we feel might be as weak as the Whitehurst building. And because there's nothing, what happens right now, we can get a driving hard rain, and they call us to come up there because it gets wet inside. It blows through the siding because it's metal siding screwed right to the purlins. There's really not, then you got interior walls, and so it comes in there, and once it gets in, it's then. So we know that it wouldn't take a lot. We feel like it wouldn't take much wind to damage that. But we were doing what we had to do and what we could afford to do whenever we built it and put it there like it is. So as we move, it's just, I think the next step is to do as the mayor and what we've said. I highly recommend that we have a consensus to allow us to form this committee and move forward and evaluate every building that could be and would be used, and what our next step would be to harden those buildings and secure them in the event, and such as the PD up there.
Okay. Council members, do we have a consensus to form a building study committee?
Yes, Cindy, I'm going to comment first.
Go ahead.
I was going to back up what Bessie said a while ago. I thought about probably 20 years ago or less than that too, but we had a backup system with our records. But I was going to encourage and recommend, if any department of our city that doesn't have that backup system now, it happens tomorrow. Let's get our backup system to save our records that we got, period. Because I have been advised, and there is on the market something we might consider, Jamie, especially in your evidence room whatsoever. There is a system that builds these steel pods with quarter-inch metal, up to half-inch metal steel pods, that we can have a backup location and all this evidence, what have you, because we cannot replace that, period. But we got to protect what we got. And through that, and number one, this committee, it needs to have been in progress yesterday with the structural engineer sitting there involved with that. I've been in building business now 65 years, and I've seen all types of buildings and built all types of infrastructure that withstands up to 280 miles an hour winds. We don't have that in Crestview, people, but we're behind it. We're at the 11th hour, and I recommend, and still I concur with what the mayor said, every one of you. We're past the 11th hour, people. We got to move.
Councilman Faircloth.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but evidence is kept sometimes for years. It's not because we like to keep it, it's because the courts won't let you get rid of it. Because something else may happen. The guy may get convicted and go to prison, but then if he has to get, 2 years later, they call for a retrial, you still gotta have that evidence. And a good evidence room for a city the size of Crestview would probably be about half the size of this room. Or if not larger, would that be about right?
Probably twice.
Yeah. Because you don't just keep drugs and guns and whatever. You gotta keep clothes and whatever. Shovels, wheelbarrows, I mean, who knows what you gotta put in there. And it's gotta be logged and categorized and kept up with. You gotta be able to put your hands on it in just a moment's notice. And so just building us a 10 by 10 concrete block wall, you know, and putting a good steel roof on it, that's not gonna get it. It's gonna have to be a large, substantial room or structure.
Do we have your consensus to move forward with the building study committee? Councilman Faircloth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes?
Yes, and one other comment. I haven't been over to the area that's been hit, but I was down to Homestead when Andrew hit. And the exchange, which I was working for at the time, you know, we lost quite a bit of our building, and it was supposed to have been pretty standard, I mean, strong and everything. But I agree that we need to move now. I believe in weather change, and I know people might not believe that's their whatever they decide. I think that we're going to be in for more storms. The way things have been looking over the last few years, maybe not. Hopefully, won't. But I realize that we were fortunate and blessed to what I've seen down in Homestead, when it's like they dropped a bomb on the whole place over there, and I'm sure it's the same way over in east of us here. And we as leaders, elected officials of the city, we have to think forward. We can't wait till after something happens and say we shoulda. Our citizens expect us to do things which are right, in my opinion, and I know it's right, for their welfare. We're here to look out for our citizens' welfare. And we would, in my opinion, if we don't move forward and take action, then I won't say that. I better not say that. I just think we need to move forward on this. We need to get the committee, so I'm all in favor of them. And when they come back, that we need not sit on our hands and just say, okay, we'll take care of that later, that we start moving forward with whatever we can do at the time with the budgets and stuff that we have.
Okay. Council President Whitten?
You have my consensus on that, yes.
Okay, and mine also. All five council members are in agreement to move forward with a building study committee.
Who's going to initiate that, Mr. President? The mayor?
Yeah, I'll get with the chiefs, and we'll come up with the committee, and we'll report back to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, I have a couple of other items, still hurricane-related, if that's appropriate
Yeah.
Go
time.
ahead.
General Durteen called me from Eglin to give us a heads up that several of the airmen from Tyndall are being transferred to other bases, and quite a few are coming to Eglin. And he's expecting that Crestview will see some of those families here. He's expecting at the least about 100 families. And they were talking about more families, but he says Washington is aware of the situation that we have now with traffic congestion and that sort of thing. So he's hoping that it'll remain about 100 families, but he wanted to give us time to, well, we don't have any time, but to let us know what's coming our way for that. And also on another item about displaced families, I happen to know that in this city right now, we have some displaced families who are living in their in their RVs. And I think it would be very, very foolish if we tried to go around and enforce that ordinance about RVs at a time like this. I think we need to have some leeway for these people, because we don't know when they're going to be able to get back to their homes. And so that's just my suggestion. I will not tell you where they are. So that's all, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Vice President, I would also like to request that I would be on that committee.
Mr. Vice President, and what the mayor had said concerning the RVs and things like that, I think we need to really seriously take into consideration, and that we do a waiver on that at this present time. I think our growth management director has.
Go ahead.
Gentlemen, there's already is this thing on? Okay. There is already an element in the ordinance that you passed that actually is concerning the
It's in there.
storm situation,
Right.
and all that's taken into account. So it's already in there. The
Good.
protection for the people that must use the RVs in order to be there.
I remember that now.
Okay, at this time, we're moving on to item D, discussion request for workshop on animal control.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll address that if you don't mind. I think all of you got the same email I did concerning the circus that went to the mayor with the request that the city council take under advisement if we want to look at our animal control ordinances. And it stimulated thinking with me, not only that situation we should look at, but there's been an ongoing fowl problem in the city. I don't know if anybody else is aware of it. I've been involved with the elusive roosters for a couple of months now. We have a fowl problem in the city. And and also I interact with a lot of the rescue groups whenever they have adoption programs around the city, different locations, and I go and meet with the people, and I always get complaints that the rescue people get involved in rescuing pets, but there are no repercussions. So we don't have any teeth on ordinance, so we remove animals from a home where they're being abused, but nothing happens. So the family can then go out and get another animal and abuse it, or they can have puppy mills or whatever. And so the request I've had in the past was to look at the animal control ordinance too. So I think it all ties together. The dogs and cats and the roosters and the elephants, they all come together. So my recommendation is that we ask our staff to schedule a workshop to look over our animal control ordinance and determine what we want to do with it. So that's the recommendation I'm making to my fellow councilmen tonight.
Mr. Vice President, I have no problems with having a workshop on this item. I think we need to bring it out and discuss it.
I agree.
Agree.
We have consensus.
You have a consensus for that to be a workshop item? I think we need to dedicate a whole workshop to that unless there's further input.
Well, we already have in fact, we voted on it tonight, an animal control contract. I think what we need to make sure is there's an animal cruelty and humane treatment in that ordinance. It may already be.
And if I may, Mr. President, yeah, I think that's what we're looking at. Yeah, we have a contract that does that, but they also do it for the county and every other municipality. And so they can only comply with our ordinance. And like right now, we have a deficiency where they can't solve an issue we have in accordance with our ordinance. That's why I think we need to look at it. And I think Mr. Pratt brought some things to us tonight that we may not be aware of. And so in that workshop gives an opportunity to research things we may not know anything about. And so that's all I'm suggesting we do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good.
Just let me make a comment there on this animal control. What I get so much back talk from people that they call the city and they call Paul's and different things, but Paul's is not required to pick up no dead animals, period, per their contract. Am I correct now?
They pick them up off property, but not off city streets.
But I mean, in the right of way, what they said they would not. They do not pick up any discard animals. That should be with teeth in it, people.
That's with every municipality and county, and I'm not sure why that's in there, but it's with everybody they have a contract with has exactly that same thing. So,
That doesn't mean we can't change it.
doesn't mean,
That's
well,
right, exactly.
if I may interject, I have been talking to the director of PAWS and let her know that we would be talking about this in an upcoming workshop. She is available on those fourth Mondays when we normally have our workshop scheduled, so that's the other Mondays of the month. She has other meetings, but those fourth Mondays when we normally have a workshop, she is available to come and be a part of that workshop.
That would make a lot of sense.
Booker.
Mr. Vice President, since we've had a consensus on having the workshop, do we have a date that we can have a workshop?
That's what we're just talking about. Our normal workshop is, the fourth Monday is our normal workshop day.
Our normal, like I say, our normal one is, next one will be on the 26th of November.
Don't we already have a topic for that one, though?
We really do. We have several topics.
Yes, what I thought.
It just depends on how long you want your workshop to be. And we're also gonna request that we have a short 30-minute special meeting in front of that workshop. So, in order to pass.
We need to do it, but I don't think it has to be done like in 30 days. You know, we'll look a little bit down the road if we have to.
Well, you're moving into the holiday season.
Into January.
As your next meeting will be right after Thanksgiving. You will have December 10th for your next public hearing meeting, and the 24th of December is your next scheduled workshop.
Oh, I don't think that's gonna work.
I'm
I think our
assuming that you're going to cancel that one, but you haven't done that so far.
Yeah, I think our Christmas gift to ourselves is to get rid of that.
If you'll allow me to get with Ms. Thompson and find out if she's available for the January workshop, and that gives us some time to plan out.
Yes,
That sounds
that
good.
works. Are we in agreement?
That'll be January 28th.
While we're discussing it, let's go ahead and cancel the 24th of December.
We can do that.
That's pretty much done.
We can do that.
If you look at your calendar, you'll notice it's not on there.
Yeah, I already canceled mine.
I'm expecting Santa that night.
Okay, moving on, 14, staff reports and recommendations. Discussion and approval of exempt overtime due to Hurricane Michael. City Clerk.
Last fourth Thursday, whatever, fourth Monday. As you all know, when we were expecting and praying that Michael was not going to come our way, we had staff members, fire, police, public services staff members who worked past their normal time. Regular employees, hourly employees get paid overtime. We will be looking to FEMA for reimbursement on that, but that is not a guarantee. We're working with the EOC and also our FMIT insurance to help us file those papers. Again, there is no guarantee because obviously FEMA is going to be stretched pretty thin in other areas of the panhandle, but we will pursue that. However, exempt employees, normally, it doesn't matter how long you work, you get paid for what you work. So we have had a request from the fire, police, and public services for some of the exempt employees who were on call, were here more than the normal hours. We do have parts of our ordinance which allow for emergency pay for exempt employees. And if you look in your book, we do have a total cost. Now, FEMA will only pay salary. They will not pay benefits. But I wanted you guys to see exactly what the cost would be with benefits because it affects retirement, it affects workers' comp, it doesn't affect insurance or anything like that, but it does affect your basic Social Security, workers' comp, and retirement. It does increase that. So I gave you the total numbers. And what we're looking at for that, and this is just that day. This is not those October 9th and 10th. This is not anything that we've spent since then. It's because most of those guys where the fire and police are sending people over, those are our hourly employees who will get paid overtime. And hopefully it's not going to kill our budget. But the guys are keeping extremely good records on what they're sending, what they're doing, and we'll be filing those FEMA reports and cross our fingers and hope that they're able to reimburse us, at least for the salaries. But total cost for public services exempt employees, including benefits for those 2 days, is $3560.58. For fire department is $4605.82, and for police department is $1306.77 for a total cost for those 2 days of $9473.17. Again, exempt employees don't automatically get this overtime, but they are requesting that they be added to their salaries.
Council, is there any discussion?
All total, it's less than 10,000.
Less than 10,000 for the exempt employees. It's going to be more than that for our hourlies, but for the exempt, it's less than 10,000.
Is that it on discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to say, let the city go ahead and pay that now. We could wait years on FEMA.
You want to put that
Plan
in a
is to
motion?
pay it
Ms.
now. We're not going to wait on FEMA.
You want to put that in a motion?
I'll make a
Councilman
motion
Blocker?
to that effect, that we do it now.
I have a motion to approve the requested overtime pay as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? A call for the vote. All those in favor to approve the requested overtime pay as presented, say aye. Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Ordinance 1668, solid waste contract, first reading, city clerk.
Yes, just to let you all know, we did go out for bids for waste services. We had 2 bids come in. one from Waste Management, one from Waste Pro. Waste Pro is our current contractor. We did have this on the agenda for October 22nd and pulled it off because Mr. Steele and I wanted some assurances from Waste Pro that they would get back to the service level of what we had when we first went with them in 2008, I believe it was. And we did get a letter of those assurances that they'll be increasing new trucks, replacing trucks, and doing more training with their staff members. And I did have somebody from Waste Pro here if you have any questions. But based on the cost, and one thing we have to look at when we're looking at cost of the services, this is a cost that is passed along to the residents and our commercial vendors. Right now, residential solid waste service is $18 a month, approximately. The Waste Pro charge for family went up approximately $2 to $4.80. We did give them an option, and we're going to give our residential customers an option of getting a larger recycle bin. It will cost more. It will be $25.95 for them to have the larger recycle bin like the county does. The commercial rates for Waste Pro's projection went approximately up approximately 6.5%. Waste Management's bid went between 47 and 106% for commercial pickup. Residential charges, it's about a 26% increase without the extra dumpster or extra large dumpster. For Waste Pro, and that's Waste Management's bid was a 64% increase. We just did not feel that we could pass that much of an increase along to the citizens. So we will be monitoring, and when we met with Mr. Mills and Mr. Martin from Waste Pro, we let them know that we would be analyzing in the next year their service level to make sure that it stays up to where it needs to be.
Mr. Vice President. Mr. Steele, do you know off the top of your head how many customers we have in the city?
10,000.
10,000?
We have 10,000 water customers, and most of those are.
Okay, well, I'm one. Okay. Within the last 6 or 7 months, I've got about 4 complaints. When you say that times 10,000, that's a lot of complaints. And I've discussed this with Mr. Steele, and he was going to try to take care of it. Have you got any satisfaction from him?
Yes, sir. I was very stern in my statements to, and Ms. Roy can attest to that. She was present in my comments to the apparent winner of the bid. We had a committee set up to rank the two bidders, and depending, as a result of the committee, Waste Pro was the apparent low bidder and the winner of the service contract. Of course, that has to come before council for your approval, but I had some concerns, and I wanted those concerns addressed. A lot of them were simply based off of your type of complaints and complaints that I'd received, but other things that I'd seen in the everyday operations that we went through, and I explained to them. When they first came on board 10 years ago, their level of service was up here. It was top notch. It was very professional, great equipment. Equipment didn't leak. They were very professional in their ways. They operated and conducted their business. The next 5 years, it was still good, but this recently, I told them things had just went downhill very fast, and I still didn't believe that we were as bad as it could be, but we wanted some assurances from Tallahassee, from where the company's based out of, so we had Representative Ralph Mills here, along with Greg, And we asked them, are we gonna see, we wanna see new equipment, we wanna see better staff, more training, we wanna see better responses, and you know, just, there was quite a few things that we addressed, and so if we don't see them, we're gonna reevaluate this level of service in 1 year. And if we're not happy, we're gonna come back to the council, we're gonna say, we think we need to rebid this. And we can do better. We can provide a better level of service for our customers, and it's out there. And they assured us that if given this opportunity, that they would provide the level of service that we are asking for. So my recommendation is, after hearing that and seeing the letter, is that we give them the opportunity to.
Did you advise them when you had their ear that we were gonna start charging them for damage to city property?
We talked about some of that. I've talked about some of that with exactly what they're doing, and they did offer to repair the damages that they've made and some of that. And I'm sure I haven't followed up with Greg about the damages that was made to the vehicles of the truck running over the cars. I'm sure that they have adequate insurances and things that provided for those damages that occurred. But those are some of the top incidents that we talked about, and that, you know, I want to avoid those types of things. They didn't have them the first 5 years they were with us. You know, and so there's a level of proficiency and a level of professionalism and service that they once had. And you know, I said, we paid for it then. We're paying for it now. We want that level of service, whatever it takes. We want you to go back and reevaluate what you're doing. You were a small company then, and you rose to the occasion. I just can't see why you're not staying at that level, and we're not getting that level of service. So, you know, would we get it with another provider? I don't know. You know, we were not getting it with the previous provider. That's why we left and rebid it. So
we had complaints in here at just about every council meeting we had back then with the other people.
Absolutely. And we don't have those. And I have records where we were receiving 50 complaints a week before, and we still don't have nothing like that now. So our level of service is better than we used to have, but it's still not as good as it was when these guys first came on board. And maybe they spoiled us. In my opinion, we were, you know, I didn't get a complaint hardly. I forget now. It was a very low number for the entire year, the first year that they were on board. And I think they understood what I was saying. Do you agree, Greg? So I think that we have made our point. I think they understand the seriousness of our concerns. I know they have mine, and I can't speak for council members. I never do that. I do tell them if I feel like I've spoken to some and they have the same concerns I do, but I've made all of that information as clear as I possibly can to them, and they've written a letter saying that they give us the assurances that these things will be taken care of. So we have to take them at their word and give them an opportunity.
Well, I don't know how many times your people have been out on the end of my street in the last 3 or 4 months, but after you talked to them, the crew came out there and replaced 2 or 3 of those reflectors, and now they're all leaning where they've been run over. So.
Well, and we know for sure that one of them, of the occurrences, wasn't Waste Pro contractor. It was the other company that serves the county residents there. They had it on video. It was their truck, and they admitted that. So we have 2 service contractors running in that same area. I think that both of them don't know how to look out a rearview mirror very well. That's my opinion.
Well, I've replaced my fence a couple of times too. They don't know how to fit that truck in a 16-foot driveway.
Well, we're addressing those concerns, and we're also going to try to make some improvements at the end of your driveway that allow them a better way of turning around, so they'll quit running over the post and fence and the bollards. And we think we have enough right of way to do it. We're working on that now, not only for your benefit but also for theirs. to give them a better way of
But
turning around.
It just creates a dangerous condition when you've got those reflectors up there at night to let drivers coming down the hill see that they're running out of road. And when those things are pushed over laid black, they get no reflection whatsoever. And so they're creating a dangerous condition.
Yes, sir.
And I suspect they'll be liable for it.
I agree with all your concerns and comments, and I've given those concerns. I've expressed my concerns to them, and I think they'll be addressed. I feel confident moving forward, at least giving them the opportunity to prove themselves one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman
But
Block.
still, I have a question to you, and you've answered most of it, but my question is this. What percentage of compliance, in your opinion, is our current provider providing to our city?
Compliance, they pretty much have to be around 100% in compliance.
That's what I'm getting at.
Because I'm not the one who regulates that, the state does, but they're in compliance. There's some things in operational wise that they're doing to improve, and we'll keep working toward on those issues.
But their current provider is willing to try and work with us.
Yes, sir.
I have no problem with that, but there's got to be some changes made.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all,
Has-
Mr. President.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I gotta read the ordinance
Oh,
first.
I'm sorry.
I was
Ms.
getting
Kidd.
all the explanations in. Okay.
Okay.
Ordinance number 1668 reads by title. An ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, granting a non-exclusive franchise to Waste Pro USA Incorporated, a private corporation for the collection and disposal of residential and commercial solid waste, yard refuse, and recycling, providing for authority, providing for definitions and terms, providing for certain conditions and requirements relating thereto, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is ordinance number 1668.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Councilman Blocker.
I move to adopt ordinance 1668, solid waste franchise on the first reading.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. We'll go to the vote. All in favor?
Discussion, please.
Excuse me. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. You said the increase is what? $4?
The increase for
something?
residential is $4.80.
How are we going to advertise that to our customers?
We're
so
sending
they
it
know?
out in the water. It'll be effective, and it's not effective till January 1st, so it'll be going out in the water bills.
The increase, but now we're going to tell them, we explain ahead of time there's going to be an increase? Is that what
That
you're
it'll be going out in the water bill before,
saying? Okay.
in late, second half of November,
I
the
just
first
want to
time.
get surprised, open up the bill and say that they
No,
go
it'll be going out in the second cycle of November and the first cycle of December.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, discussion,
Councilman
and
Hayes.
it's not really with the contract, but it's with the action. If we approve this, me personally, from Mr. Steele, since would be in charge of that, anything over 5 complaints a month that you report back to the council that you've received this many complaints, and if they can be verified, I'd like to know personally myself. So if it is something where we see there's non-compliance or whatever, we can start figuring out what we're gonna do.
Sure.
That's all I
There's
have.
no discussion. We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 1668, solid waste franchise on the first reading. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Next is discussion of dispatch move.
As was discussed a little while ago about the dispatch center, we in the budget, and we'll get into this a little bit later. There was money put in the budget for the new dispatch center, combining fire and police dispatch. The two chiefs got together after our meeting about the hurricane and determined that they can work it out without building a new dispatch center. So the cost will be just a couple of $1,000s, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the cost will be very minimal.
It's a matter of basically moving the equipment. Chief Holland is, if they need any new equipment, he's doing that out of his budget for furniture and that kind of stuff. The cost will basically be adding phone lines to the records room, and then the records room will be coming up front where the dispatch is. So when we get into the next item with the radios can't be installed till the dispatch move is finished. So basically what we're looking for is we're taking the original dispatch move of $200,000 off the table and moving it, combining it into what it is now. Now, this doesn't negate looking forward, making some plans as we go forward to have a more secure building, but this at least gets them, away from the front of the police department so that they're not out there exposed all day long, and gives them more room and gives room to combine the two processes so that all the dispatchers are in one spot rather than half of them here and half of them over there. So basically we're looking you've already approved the combining of the dispatches. We're just basically looking for a consensus to get them, change that into combining them into a current space rather than building a new space.
Mr. Chairman, a question. What context of the infrastructure is going to be renovated, or is there much renovation to the infrastructure at present?
It should be no renovation. It's just moving furniture from one area to another.
No problem.
Installing phone, I probably have to add phone lines because there's only
Yes.
one phone line in the record
Sorry.
room, so we'll have to add more phone lines, but that's a minimum cost.
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, or Mr. Vice President, I move to approve moving forward with the combining of the fire department, police department dispatch, and the installation of the new radio system.
So second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving moving forward with the combining of fire department and police department dispatch and the installation of the new radio system, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, this is my last one.
Indeed.
All right. If you all remember, almost 2 years ago, we approved the purchase of a new radio system for fire, police, and public services. There was FCC frequency issues that caused this to get delayed. At that point in time, part of the money was coming out of parks, part of it was coming out of public services, and part of it was coming out of the fire reserve. We have the radios, finally. We have the FCC rating. We haven't started using the radios because they have been holding on to them until the dispatch move gets done, because we had planned on moving, obviously, dispatch across the world, and it would have cost another $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 to move the radio system from current dispatches to the new dispatches. So that's been on hold. Looking at, and I gave you all a revised breakdown of the money. The total cost for these radio systems was $358,699. The new breakdown that I gave you all a while ago, and it was going to be part of Parks Reserve, Fire Reserve, and the rest of it was contingency funds. Based on the fact that we are now not doing the dispatch move that was approved, we held out $10,000 of that for cost of the move. Now we can use it for possibly cost of the structural engineer. I don't know how much that'll cost us. I don't imagine it would be, I don't know how much it'll cost. But, so that gives us a $10,000 cushion. So instead of taking $100,000 out of the parks reserve, we're going to use $190,000 of that dispatch move money, $100,000 out of the fire reserve, which only leaves us, and of course I gave you all my papers. A balance of $68,698, which would come out of the two contingency budgets. Because public service will be using part of this, the contingency money can come out of the utility contingency as well as the general contingency money. We have $500,000 in the contingency and utility, and we also have $1.3 million in the contingency in the general fund. I will tell you, just makes you a little bit nervous, was doing a little figuring over the weekend on utilities. Our utility budget carry forward was based on using all of our expenses last year and all of our revenues. I will tell you, revenues last year in utility were up almost $500,000. So we have $500,000 more than we thought we did. And our expenses were down close to $250,000 in utility. So we have a $750,000 cash carry forward that we were not expecting, that we have that we can put into contingency in the utility office.
That's good.
We do have the equipment, it's here. We can't send it back. It was a contract that was approved. We just gotta pay for it.
Councilmember discussion.
Yeah, I have a question for our distinguished clerk. If you have this funds in utilities, why would we have to go over to general and touch any of that?
Because it is being spent out of general and utility, but we'll just have to determine how much utility will pay for it. That's why I didn't put an amount for general and utility. I just put it'll be
The total 68.
it'll come out of both. And it can all come out of utility based on, I've got to get with Mr. Steele and see exactly how much equipment that the utility department has taken, and the split will be based on how much of that equipment is theirs. We can't pay for utility equipment out of the general, we can pay for utility equipment out of the general fund, but we can't pay for general fund out of the utility. So we'll have to determine exactly how much, because the only thing that the utility department gets is the handhelds. They're not getting the dispatch equipment or anything like that, and that's the major expense.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I don't know if our citizens understand. You can't take such money for one thing because you got it there. You can have to use.
You can
it
use
for
general
that
for
purpose
anything, but you
only.
can't
General
use
we
them.
can I understand.
Councilman Bond.
Basically, has there been any accrued expense, additional expenses on this contract amount? We've been set dormant for 2 years, no accrued expenses, period.
We've paid $5,200 of a initial invoice like almost 2 years ago, but that's the only thing that's been paid on it so far.
Okay.
But it has not gone up.
Now, this contract price was based on, we buying it off another city.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we got a lot of discounts. We got almost $50,000 in discounts because it was based on the number of units that we had.
I just don't want to be gigged when we don't need to be.
There's the same price we agreed to 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Mr. Vice President, I move to approve the amended funding sources for the first communication contract for radio equipment for the city of Crestview.
Mr. President, so moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is any further discussion? If not, a call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We're at 16:55. Let's see. Teresa, you're up. Excuse me. Betsy, can you read the ordinance 1655?
I certainly will. Ordinance 1655 reads by title. An ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, vacating and abandoning the perpetual easements granted to the City of Crestview by Wiley A. Yon and Joan R. Yon for the utility and ingress-egress purposes in conjunction with the development of the Sundial Mobile Home Park, providing for filing of this ordinance with the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Okaloosa County, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is the first reading of Ordinance 1655.
Gentlemen, the property owners, Had Some To Me LLC, has submitted application to have the utility easements removed and vacated from their property. The actual utility lines have already been removed, and the connections, there were approximately 34 water connections there when the old mobile home park was there, but they have since been removed. Water mains have been removed and capped, and actually provide a fire hydrant at the front of the property. The mobile home park was began in like 1993 and was more recently turned down in about 2004, 2003. This property is actually commercial future land use and commercial zoning, so therefore, in order to reestablish a residential development there, they would have to have a comprehensive plan amendment filed and also have the property rezoned. The current owners actually are looking at a commercial development, so the utility easements actually hinder that process, and they request that you vacate them. Is there any questions?
Teresa, what happened to the old septic tanks that was on the premises?
This was actually served by city sewer. And there was if you look on your map, if you look towards the south, this is actually your recorded map for, if you look along the southern portion of the property, that was actually your sewer main. This was completely served by sewer. It was not septic tank.
Well, I was advised there were at times septic tanks on that premises.
There may have been in the past, back in the early 90s. I'm sure when they have their environmental study done on the property, if there were septic tanks, they will have to deal with the removal of any of those.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion?
Mr. Vice President, I move to adopt ordinance 1655 on the first reading and move to second reading.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
I guess this would be an opportune time to say this would be one of the items that we would like to cover at the special meeting on November 26th, if that meeting so be granted by the council. It's the second plea for the meeting.
Or
We
what
have
was-
we have a workshop on November 26th, begins at 5:30. We would like a special meeting to have directly in front of the workshop, and it could convene at 5 o'clock if you so wished.
Consensus?
Question. Would 5 o'clock, will we need from 5 to 6 or 5 to 5:30?
No, the workshop begins at 5:30.
Okay.
So we would, if you decide you would like to meet at 5 o'clock, the workshop would begin when the special meeting ended, or 5:30 or 5:45.
Sounds good to me.
It's, if we don't give it a specific time or begin as soon as follows, we don't have to wait between the two meetings.
That's good to me.
We all good?
Yeah.
Councilman Fairclough? Okay.
Thank you.
We're good. Okay, ordinance 1669.
Ordinance 1669 reads by title, an ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, amending its adopted comprehensive plan, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for purpose, providing for changing the future land use designation from Okaloosa County mixed use category to City of Crestview commercial future land use category on approximately 9.9 acres more or less in Section 32, Township 3 North, Range 23 West, providing for future land use map amendment and providing for an effective date. This is the first reading of ordinance 1669.
Okay. Gentlemen, this property looks familiar to you because it was annexed only a short time ago. LDJ Realty Investments LLC is the property owner, and they have completed the submittal of the comp plan, small-scale comp plan amendment and rezoning applications, paid their fees. As this was discussed when it was being annexed, it is going to be a commercial development there, primarily working in restaurants and retail area. It's going to join with the other property that is contiguous to the property that is bordering Highway 85. So this will enable the small strip along Highway 85 to feather out and be, 10 acres deep. So there is some wetlands on this property. However, there is enough uplands in order to make a nice, small commercial area there. So, if you're wondering, that right on the corner of Hugo Lane and 85, this will actually be up against near where the new Panda Express is at.
Okay.
So, if that helps you to locate where the property's at. It needs to be commercial, and that's what is being requested. Any questions?
Is there a motion?
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, I move to adopt ordinance 1669 on the first reading and move to the second reading.
Second. So second.
Have a motion and a second. Fairclough, Hayes, and Fairclough second. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next is ordinance 1670.
Ordinance 1670 reads by title, an ordinance of the City of Crestview providing for the rezoning of 9.9 acres more or less of real property located in Section 32, Township 3 North, Range 23 West, from Okaloosa County Mixed-Use District zoning to the City of Crestview Commercial District zoning C1, providing for authority, providing for the updating of the Crestview zoning map, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is ordinance 1670.
Gentlemen, this is a continuation of the 9.9 we were just discussing. It will implement the commercial zoning, which will make the property in compliance. It will then have commercial future land use and commercial zoning. And is there any questions?
No questions, no discussion. Is there a motion?
Mr. Vice President, I move to adopt ordinance 1670 on the first reading and move to second reading.
So second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Next is ordinance 1671.
Ordinance 1671 reads by title, an ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, amending its adopted comprehensive plan, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for purpose, providing for changing the future land use designation from low-density residential category to commercial future land use category on approximately 3.03 acres more or less in Section 32, Township 3 North, Range 23 West, providing for future land use map amendment and providing for an effective date. This is Ordinance 1671.
Gentlemen, the Bowarskis, the new property owners, have submitted application requesting a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning designation assignment on the 3.03 acres that are situated here. They're on the northwest quadrant of the Applin Road at the Rayburn Street South intersection. That is approximately 2 blocks off of Ferdon Boulevard. And it is contiguous to commercial development area there, which allows for them to request to also be commercial. It's a fairly large establishment that's already there. There's a large home and a large outbuilding. The outbuilding will be translated into a commercial area, and a sort of a manager-type upkeep will allow for the residential area to be, the house to perform as residential use there. They are asking that the low-density residential and the R2 zoning be commercial future land use and commercial C1 zoning. Mr. George Borinsky is actually here if you have a question or anything for him. If not, if you have a question for me.
And council member? I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Blocker?
I move to adopt Ordinance 1671 on the first reading and move to the second reading.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Next is Ordinance 1672.
Ordinance 1672 reads by title. An ordinance of the City of Crestview, Florida, providing for the rezoning of 3.03 acres more or less of real property located in Section 20, Township 3 North, Range 23 West, from the single or multifamily dwelling district zoning R2 to the commercial district zoning C1, providing for authority, providing for the updating of the Crestview zoning map, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is the first reading of ordinance number 1672.
Gentlemen, this involves the property we were previously talking about, the 3.03 acres at the intersection of Applin and Rayburn. This ordinance 1672 will actually implement the commercial zoning onto the property, which will make it in compliance with its requested future land use. So, is there questions?
It just looks like the plot map, just an overlayment is all it is.
Pardon?
It just looks like the plot map is just an overlayment of the same property.
It is.
That's what it is.
It's just the same property.
Yeah.
Except on your flume, you're actually a blue, and on your zoning, you're yellow. So,
Right.
and what they would like to be is that nice pink color.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Mr. Vice President,
Councilman
I move to
Hayes.
adopt ordinance 1672 on the first reading, move to the second reading.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Councilman Hayes and Blocker. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, any staff comments? Any?
I have one thing I need to cover. First of all, a reminder, thank you all for sending me your veterans, that we'll all be ready. We need to leave here at around 9:30 on Monday morning so that we can get to downtown, wherever we may be. I'll try to find that out before then. It will be carts, so dress warmly. Second of all, I need about 10 minutes on the November the 26th workshop to cover a resolution dealing with the red light cameras. It won't take very long.
Mr. Vice Chair, a question for Madam Clerk. Do you, those waivers or whatever, you want them signed prior to, just before we get ready, or you want them to come down here
If
prior
they can
to
come
that?
by, that would be great. Ms. Peacock has them on her desk, otherwise I'll have them signed before we head off on Monday.
Okay.
Fire Chief Hall?
Yes, sir. I just want to give you guys an update. A while back, we actually had to seek you guys' approval to be able to proceed with the Firehouse Subs grant. We did, and we actually got notification that we've been awarded that grant. So we're actually proceeding forward with purchasing the battery-operated TNT extrication tools. We got the Hearst on the Firehouse Sub grant, and they have proved outstanding. The guys fell in love with it. You just, when you hear battery-operated, you just kind of go, eh. But the technology and everything else that they put into these is just phenomenal, especially the speed they're able to grab, go do extrication, and not have to worry about setting up a power unit is phenomenal. But yes, so we did get awarded the grant, so they've actually put in the purchase, and we're going to be getting cutters, spreaders, rams, and stabilizers through the representative called TNT. So that'll go on our other engine down at Station 2, and then we'll move those TNTs up to Station 3 at the time. So we're very fortunate to get that. Also, too, just wanted to give an update. We did have a deployment last week where we have been working with North Okaloosa Fire District. They supplied the engine and a driver, and we supplied the captain and 2 firefighters, along with a full engine company from Ocean City Wright, a mixed engine company from Midway, and one from Fort Walton Beach, I do believe. We went down as a strike team per request of FEMA, and went down there, and the guys are over there now. They're supposed to be coming back on Friday. I get daily updates. They're tired. They have Shore Natural have earned their money over there by just running emergency calls, fires, EMS, cutting trees. They went to a first responder's house that wasn't able to get there yet, and cleared off the yard and got debris out of the way, got stuff off the house. They went to an apartment complex and put on tarps over the roofs. As my captain says, he kind of chuckled, and he said, well, I do believe Crestview Fire Department's leading the way over here, because we're definitely been a part of everything that they've thrown at us. And even the strike team leader even stepped up and said, there are other trucks. They can run the calls. And he was just like, well, they need to learn how to move faster is all I can say. So I'm very proud of them. They're definitely representing our city very, very well. We did have 2 dispatchers also that went over to Bay County and assisted their dispatch center. I'll be honest with you, when I hear Bay County, I think, the level of technology and service, they're going to be up here above us. But when the girls came back, they were offered jobs over there, because they were like, you can do both police, fire, EMS, you can do all of it. We want you over here. They were like, nah, we're good. And she said, come to find out, Crestview was a lot higher than what they have over there. But they also assisted them very well and represented our city very proudly. So I'm very pleased with all of them.
Thank you. Anyone else? Eddie, Marie? Comments? I'm sorry.
Just to brief you on our people that's out. We're in the 3rd week of 4 officers rotating out there. They're providing security for power companies at a base camp. And from what I heard today, I think Friday we'll wrap that up, so we'll have spent 3 weeks over there.
Mr. Steele? All right, comments from the audience. I have one card, Camilla Sowell. Yes, please. State your name and address, please.
I'm Candace Sowell. I'm with Clayton Homes at 5208 South Verdon. I'm actually here, though, because of a customer that I have named Lola Davis. She lives she has property at 672 Edney West. She bought a house from us at the beginning of October, and we've been trying to do the permitting application. It's kind of hard, but we have just, after 3 weeks, been told that we're going to have to include a garage or a carport in order for the permit to go forward. And this was not talked about in the beginning. And Ms. Davis does not have the money, nor can we reclose her loan to help her get the money. And so if this is the way it stays, then we have to cancel her contract and she's not gonna get a house at all. So I'm wondering if I can get help, because I was told the reason why it was like that is because her home would need to model all the other homes in the neighborhood. Well, when I went out to look, there are only 3 homes that have garages out of 12. So that has nothing to do with her. And so that's why I'm trying to get help here before we end up canceling the contract. And I can leave these. These are emails.
Councilman Hayes.
Yeah, I got a letter from, email from the young lady here, and I immediately went to, the code to find out what they were. They gave me a copy of what it was. I got photo shots of, the surrounding areas and everything. I sat down and, discussed this. And, I had them send a copy of you, what I talked with, and I told her that this, from what I've seen for our code, and from what I've seen from her, that this is an item that has to come before council, and it truly does. Now, since that time, I've talked with Ms. Sanaya, and I also talked to Ms. Teresa concerning this issue. They showed me the codes. I don't know if you're familiar with the codes, and I didn't know if you were going to come tonight, and I don't know if they had any information of this. The council does, but I'd like to hear from our growth management director concerning this issue, since I looked into it.
Gentlemen, the 2 homes that are adjacent to this lot both have garages and concrete drive. You have concrete drives from the other areas around there. What is and then you have other in the neighborhood where there actually have the garages and their concrete drives. So we're not asking for a garage to be built. We're asking for the carport and the driveway, which is reasonable and will meet our code. The only other thing, if this is not satisfactory, is to file for a variance and go for your board of adjustment. So according to the code, if they had come and had went through, and this is not the first home that has been done, normally the manufacturers actually present to us ahead of time so that they know all the expectancies of the process, whether or not it will be required a driveway, whether it would be required a carport, whether it will be required an actual garage, which in your newer areas, we are requiring garages because that's what our code says that we must require. This one, they had already closed on their loan prior to being submitted in for approval. We've got the stack of the process here, if y'all would like to have a look at it. But we have not canceled the or sent the application back as being, will not approve, until we heard from whether the board wants it to go to a variance, process, which is a board of adjustment process. It's $800 for your application, and it will take anywhere from 4 to 6 months.
Okay, Ms. Sal, does your customer know of the carport and driveway
Does she know about it?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
proposal.
She knows. I told her.
as the minimum?
I'm sorry.
As the minimum?
What do you mean as the,
Carport and driveway
I,
for the property?
we didn't accrue that money, no. But I did actually, go down to meet with someone, and I put that in here, but I'm so nervous. I was there for about 30 minutes, and then they came out and said he must have slipped away, and that's when I got the permit pack. And the lady is sitting right at the front door. She'll have to remember me because we had a conversation, and I waited.
I don't know, I didn't know. The only person I spoke with was our planner, who has, it has to be approved through planning before, they
Right.
get before it follows on through with the permitting area.
Right.
I don't have any reports from the permit clerks in here. Only the correspondence that has been back and forth between planning and yourself and Ms.
And if you'll see, the last 2 emails weren't even replied to. I didn't even get an answer. But I will let her know that. She has a landlord, so 8 months is not gonna work.
Can you meet this week with the growth management or Teresa's?
Sure, I can, yeah. I mean, I would wanted to do that. I've been asking, what do I need to do? You know, but.
Have you had a sit-down meeting with these planners? They have a lot of notes in here where they have been speaking with you.
No, I have never sat down with any of them.
So y'all handled everything via email?
Yes.
And I would be happy to talk with you, but the only time I'll be available this next week will be early tomorrow morning. I will be leaving midday. I have a funeral. My brother passed away this morning.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
So I am on my way out of town, but I'd be happy to sit down with you a few minutes in the morning.
Okay, that would be great. And if I could bring Miss David with me, just 'cause all she's hearing is, you know, and I don't even know what to say to her anymore. And she's as scared that she's about to get kicked out of her home, and she has this property but can't do anything with it.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a magistrate that could give us an instant
Right,
decision.
right.
We would have to go to a board,
Okay.
which is a more lengthy time.
Okay.
don't
Where do
know.
I come to in the morning? I'm
I'm in the growth management department, same place
Okay.
the permitting is.
and your name again?
Teresa Gator.
Perfect. I will be there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sal.
No, that, we'll let her do that.
All right. Anyone else from the audience wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, since you overall, I'd like to hear something from Mr. Turler about his comment. He may have a comment. Since he has some accusations poked at him tonight, I'd like for him to defend himself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to be dismissed.
All right. You want one of these?
Thank you for your vote. I'm Greg Martin, Division Manager, Waste Pro, 98 Old Milligan Drive, Crestview, Florida. Just to answer a few of your questions, we are getting new trucks. We have done a refurb of some employees and others have gone through training. What we do with new drivers now is they go through a 2-day training facility in Milton, and then they go for a week in Atlanta, so they're not disturbed by myself to send them on errands, etc. They get a one-on-one training with the way that they should do things properly as far as driving and watching out for customers and driving appropriately with the helper on the back. Then they come back and go through a mentor program. And then they're signed off and then they're ready to go to work. So it's a 3-week process. So for shorthanded, it's beneficial in the long run, but better for the city of Crestview and for Waste Pro. So cameras, we installed cameras on our vehicles now. So if there are any incidents, it's a pro-con kind of thing. Pro, whether we had a customer call in and say we stole a couple bicycles last Christmas, we ran the camera, there were no bicycles there when the driver got there. So on the other hand of that, on an accident, we can see if it was our fault or their fault. So we have cameras on the front, the back, and the sides. So we can, all we have to do is make a phone call, order the camera and the time, and go from there. But as far as taking care of the city, I know Mr. Fairclough said he had 4 incidents in 6 or 7 months. I really don't want to see one. I know when Wayne calls me, and I thank Wayne, by the way, he helps me a lot with yard waste and et cetera, but he'll get with me, and I think I handle it pretty fairly. I don't like to have any complaints. We are human, we're gonna have them. But on the other hand, I do know that we pick up a lot of debris that is not within the ordinance, and I hope you understand that. I really do, because it's a lot. But if there's any questions you have of me, I know I've given you cards before, I'll do it again, but I thank you for voting for us for another few years. I don't think I'll be here that long, but while I'm here, I plan on taking care of the city of Crestview the best way I know how. Is there any questions that I can answer from you?
Well, I can say every time I have called you, it's been taken care of in very short time.
Yes,
And I appreciate that. I usually talk to you directly, and I do know that you have picked up debris that you're not, that's, this contract does not indicate that you do. So I appreciate you going above and beyond. Every time I've called you, you've helped.
Thank you, sir.
I can also attest, as many times I've called, you responded, and I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, thank you. And I will.
Mr. Vice Chair, I've only had a couple calls from citizens, maybe 3/4 the max, and they responded quite well to the concerns that I had. Matter of fact, they sent a pickup truck out one time because they had failed to leave some stuff in the bottom of the can, and they came up and came and got it and taken care of it. And the other citizen phoned. They had missed their stuff. Well, some of the stuff that I saw, I knew we shouldn't be picking up, but they came over. It took a couple of weeks before they got over to get that, but they eventually did get over and get it. So I know that there's incidents that things happen. Like I say, we're human, and but when I've got a call from a citizen and I've got in contact with them, they responded quite well in a timely fashion. So that I'm glad of that.
Mr. Steele.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add to my previous comments too, that anytime you're providing customer service, any level, I've learned this in the last few years, the expectations are so varied. Majority of you people are pretty well pleased. You have a couple, maybe 5 or 10 that they'll never be pleased. It don't matter who provides that service, they would not be happy. And unfortunately, they are who they are, and we still provide service to all of them. But in Greg's defense, I sat here and I told his immediate supervisor, which was the vice chairman of Waste Pro out of Tallahassee, I told him, I said, it's not his fault that things are going, because I work with him on a daily basis and I know what he's doing and what he's trying to do. But when he's not getting the support that he needs and the equipment he needs and the things that he requests through his budget and the way that, and the what they were doing to him, I said, you're hurting us. I said, so I'm holding you accountable. And that's what I said right there in front of Greg and Miss Roy, and I know because I've went over and talked to her many times when I've got questions about issues and why is things happening. I knew it wasn't because of him. It's because of what was happening in the hire, you know. And I know business and I know how it works and I know what was going on. And I confronted him with it, and he assured us that it would be taken care of. So we'll see.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Does anyone else from the audience wish to speak? This meeting is adjourned.